Well, let's start then with the course about the holistic understanding of ourselves using primarily the Enneagram in this case, even though, as you know, the Enneagram is the representation of the tree of life in a circle, which in principle has 9 equal parts, but now you are going to see there are many more. There are very narrow views about the Enneagram, because most of the teachings, which are popular nowadays, are concerning the personality types, the psychological aspects. But the way I came to understand the Enneagram is from the point of view of a complete perspective. We have to take into consideration the spirit, the soul, the body, and we cannot understand what the Enneagram is expressing if we just focus on personality types. I don't reject the personality typology on the basis of popular methods. I think they are interesting, and we will see that in the second part of this mini course. But I think the basic understanding implies watching the principles that run through the Enneagram, which are basically harmonic principles, which are also expressed in music. I am amazed about the musicality of that symbol. So this approach is harmonic. If we study the Sephirotic tree with the 13 spheres, we can get to the same understanding, but from a point of view of phenomenology of each sphere. And sometimes it's not so easy to detect the pattern of music, but we can also find music in the Sephirotic tree. I don't know if you understand chords, but the chords move in a certain way. And it was very interesting to me how in music theory they arrange chords in a way which is similar to the Sephirotic tree, because the principles we are going to study are harmonic. Whether we are using the Enneagram or the Sephirotic tree, they are the movement of energy, the dynamic of energy, both in a negative way, destructive way, and integral, holistic, conscious way. So the idea is to know ourselves. We are not studying a symbol or a particular tool so we can apply it and guess things. We are studying ourselves. And for that, we need a science, especially some of us, which need more order. Otherwise, our emotions are so strong that we find chaos inside. So I don't think a symbol is strictly necessary, but it can be very useful. It saves time. You can reach to certain conclusions before. Otherwise, you can be years and years trying to guess why you feel obstructed, why you feel frustrated, why you cannot grow, because you don't have the science, the exact knowledge. Or even, as we say in Spanish, conciencia. Conciencia is conscience. Sometimes it has the nuance of consciousness, but conciencia also means with science. You separate conciencia is with science. And I mean science by exact knowledge of what is taking place. And this brings also enthusiasm. So when we know things perfectly, we want to understand more and study more ourselves. So this is another thing. And you are going to see that in the work Enneagram, as it is understood, within the tradition that was brought to the West by Mr. Gurdjieff, something which usually is not mentioned in courses on the Enneagram. Or even some people say, no, the Enneagram is occultic. False, because occultic means hidden. And one of the things that Mr. Gurdjieff taught is that there is nothing hidden. You can see it or you don't see it, but it's there. The truth is self-evident. That some people want to organize certain schools and esoteric societies with an occult way of understanding things. Okay, that's probably what most people tend to do. They form groups and they become occultic. They are hiding certain things. But in this way of understanding, it's not a question of hiding. Sometimes the information has to be presented in small fragments so you can digest little by little. Because if you present everything at once, then you get an indigestion. You need to process. Absolutely. So what I suggest now is to understand the Enneagram from the basic principles. And it's a good approach even to understand other ways of understanding the inner knowledge. I'm going to show you 3 configurations which I designed in PDF. You can see the 3 of them. And one of the things that called my attention when I was trying to understand the Enneagram deeper in myself is that it has many more connections than we see usually. Because if we just see the Enneagram is one circle with 9 parts. But if you look at the configurations and the intersections, you can see many more connections. I don't know if you have some notion about the Enneagram. Have you heard anything?
No, I haven't. Just what I heard from you. That's it. You know, this, I haven't really looked into it any further from just like the introduction that you gave on the videos. And,
well, usually you won't see the Enneagram with these points, these inner points, which I just highlighted. You will see the Enneagram with the triangle in the middle and with the 6 points, which represent actually a movement of energy. Now, there is a basic idea. The circle represents eternity, or that which is stable. It's always present. And in a sense, when we are in this inverted world, what we have present is the body. The body is not meant to be annihilated or rejected. We have to work with the body as a point of stability. So the attention of the body, or bringing our attention to the body, is a way of feeling everything, even eternity. This is something which can even be glimpsed in other teachings. With, for instance, in the East, the 3 bodies of the Buddha, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmakaya. Dharmakaya is the body of truth, Sambhogakaya would be the astral realm, and Nirmakaya is nature. So in a sense, the whole universe is a body which contains eternal processes, and everything is within that body. So the circle would be the body. The triangle would be the intellect, or that consciousness and conscience that brings the union of 2 forces. So here we have the reconciling force, affirming and denying. I use three primary colors to make it didactic. It doesn't mean there is a color assigned necessarily to the reconciling force. This is a way of understanding it. We could base the entire theory of color using the Enneagram, because with these primary colors, blue, yellow, and red, we get the other. In the theory of colors and music, we would start with the red, then would be orange, then yellow, because between yellow and red, we have orange. But here, I just want to emphasize the main triangle. And then you notice there is a pattern which starts in 1, 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1. This is the mechanical flow of energy. So everything in the universe starts flowing through the octaves, fulfilling 7-step process. What happens is that there is no usually an additional force in many processes, and sometimes they get in the middle, or they just grow to some point, and then they die or they deviate. This is the deviation of the octave, because we need an additional force. I'm going to show you the musical Enneagram so you can see the connection, because originally the Enneagram was understood with notes as well. And if you notice, the main triangle is Do or C in British notation. Then the point 1 would be D or Re. Then we will have Mi, E. Then between Mi and F or Fa, there is an additional force, which is another Do and another octave. We will understand this deeper in the following class, because we will see the octaves of alimentation for our being. This is what we have to do consciously. We have to bring something so the octave develops. If we start in Do, Re, Mi, something is going to stop. We need an additional force, so the octave moves to Fa. If we don't do this additional force, then the octave will deviate. And usually the mechanical process follows a direction which repeats over and over again. So you can be leaving the same mistakes over and over again. What we have to do in terms of the sequence would be reversing the order. So if the mechanical order is 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1, we would be doing the reverse. So 1, 7, 5, 8, 2, 4, 1. You will understand this better when we see the dynamics in the personality, because we can see how our inertia moves and how we can reverse it. These are real dynamics that have to be understood in each context. So if you are studying music, you apply it to music. If you are studying psychology, to psychology. If we are studying it with food, as we will do in the next class, we will see there are 3 main foods, and they have their own octave of development. The food of the physical body, the food of the astral body, and the food of the mental body. All that together feeds our whole being, body, soul, and spirit. So this is a basic understanding. But going back to the main symbol, we have to take into consideration there are principles. or laws as they are understood, the main law of the universe or the main principle would be the oneness. Everything starts with a point, which I represent with the color black, because it's as if it were an unknown or something hidden, something unconscious, but we start discovering its richness as we find in ourselves the abundance of that oneness. I don't know if you have noticed the peaceful state in which we get into when we observe the blackness of the universe. That's something that fascinates me since I was a child. Finding the source of order, peace, of serenity, when we go into the darkness inside, something we are afraid of in principle because we think it's empty, but it's full of something, that silence, that origin, which is full of light. In reality, it's not an absolute darkness. We think it's dark or non-being or non-existent because when we don't perceive it, we enter into the mode of scarcity. I need something because I'm not full. So the main point of the Enneagram is the center, always. Now, when we go to the center, then we can apply the three main forces. This is the law of three, or the principle of three, the triad, as it was understood by the Pythagoreans. And the triad is three forces. So we have the reconciling force, the apex, then the affirming force, and the denying force. Because in the universe, we will always find a negative side or some tendency towards chaos, towards what some call entropy. And this is known also as the energy of the serpent. And it's not bad in itself. It's just a force which tends to move away from the center. So we have two movements: centrifugal, which escapes from the center, and centripetal. It moves towards the center. When we have this centrifugal movement, then there is an expansion. If you imagine this as a vortex, then you will see these 2 points will expand and get intention. So the affirming and denying forces of the universe tend to get very tense when there is no reconciliation. So it's not a point of denying duality. We accept duality, we integrate duality, but reconcile it. Otherwise, we fall under the law of duality. And we cannot really see duality in this symbol. But in the symbiotic tree, we see the 2 columns, a clear duality. But here, you can divide the symbol in 2. And it's like a mirror. 1 mirrors 8 in music. Because the unison is mirrored in the octave. Then a second becomes a 7th when you invert it, or a third becomes a 6th when you invert it. And the same goes for the 4th and the 5th. The perfect 4th inverts like a 5th. So this is the axis. And in a sense, that's duality. But if you notice, duality is like a mirror. So the left is mirrored on the right and vice versa. Because of the law of three as well. And there is a very beautiful teaching which says, as the holy being is one, he cannot know himself if he doesn't become two. But how can he become two? Or how being, which is not even a he or a she, because it's before all those notions, how one can be two? Well, by a mirror. If you use a mirror, then you can see yourself. It's still one, but you are reflecting yourself. In this case, the mirror is eternity. And the light reflecting on that matter, universal matter, generates this sense of self-recognition. And that's how the Holy One begins to know as himself and herself. So as father and mother. And this starts with the triad, because there is a reconciliation of father principles, mother principles, which become the son. The son would be the universal mind that somehow has aspects of the father, but also the mother, because he comes to be incarnated. The Logos became flesh. So it's a mind that comes to be in the physical, material universe. And this primary vibration is uniting this law of 3 with the law of development, which is the law of 7, because everything starts growing in octaves, following this movement, or the opposite. We can go 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1, or 1, 7, 5, 8, 2, 4. This is a very intellectual way of understanding or approaching, but we have to discover that process in ourselves. That's how we see this is real. There is no mistake, but we have to pinpoint the intervals, especially this first interval, which we are going to see in a while. When we are working, we are going to reach points of stagnation or even doubt. And you'll see the amazing correlation of that with the main principles. So we have seen the 1 principle, the 3, the 7, and then we have to unite both. When you unite the will of affirming the 9 and reconciling forces, or active, receptive, and the union of both, then you can make the octaves grow, and there will be a fulfilling of the 2 intervals, which might seem contradictory in a sense, out of place, because if this is Do, this is Re, this is Mi, this is F or Fa, this is Sol or G, usually the following interval is between Si and Do, but we find it here. And why is this? Because in this point, we need to start working for the next interval, which is between Si and Do. You will see how beautiful this is, because it's such a strong interval that we have to start here. We start applying the force between G and A, or between Sol and La. If we don't understand, if we don't start working here, then the whole process will become fully stagnated. Even if we apply here some work, it would work, because the disharmonia in this point 5 is usually the source of many despairs, many points of hopelessness. When you start working on yourself, you can reach end points, dead ends, which you feel completely lost. You don't know how to advance, how to connect really with others. And this is because something is missing, something is lost. So we have to understand perfectly what we are doing. Now, then we have the principle of 9, which is a union of the two intervals with the law of 7. So if we sum up 7 plus 2, two intervals is 9. And in a sense, you cannot count beyond 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 would be the repetition of the 1. So 9 would be the limit. But 9 contains all the numbers. And this is fascinating because if you watch closely the interaction between the law of 3 and the law of 7 gives more points, which are the 12 fruits of the tree of life, and the middle would be the 13. This is why I add 12 and 13. If we fall under the ancient teachings that focus on the 10th, then we are missing something. Because obviously, if we sum up 9 plus 1 is 10, and you will see many enneagrams which are devoid of these specifications, you will find many Sephirotic tree with 10 spheres, and that is incomplete.
Absolutely.
But when you pay close attention, you find that the 12 is really the interaction between these two forces, the law of 3 and the law of 7. Because you grow, you expand, you develop your harmonious behaviors, harmonious processes in the body, but also your soul and your spirit. As even Apostle Paul said, we grow from splendor to splendor. We develop subtle bodies. He called them the body with the splendor of the moon, which is the vital astral body, the splendor of the sun, which is the solar astral body, or the mental body. We develop the splendor of the stars, the stellar body, which is a spiritual body. And we have also the primordial body. In total, there are 9 types of men, or 9 types of mankind, or humankind. It depends, because mankind is more developed than humankind. Human is humus. We start working with the humus of our body, our emotions, our mind. And I think that's the origin of the word human, which in Hebrew is Adam. And Adam has a value of 45. So 4 plus 5 is 9. So Adam is this. From a cosmic and microcosmic level, microcosmic and microcosmic. When we study the laws of the universe, we understand ourselves. So it's not possible to understand oneself if we don't know the universe. Now, by growing, we give the 12 fruits, and we can know them in the Sephirotic tree. But we can also guess there is a 22 base within the Enneagram. When we sum up the 10 points plus the 12, we get 22. But what are those 22? In ancient times, they were known as the 22 energies, which we find in the alphabets, Phoenician alphabet, Hebrew alphabet, and other alphabets, and they represent energies. We saw those energies studying the paths, and it's an approach for orientation, which is very useful. But if you notice, the foundation is still the 9 main energies. Actually, if you recall, when we watch the Sephirotic tree, we find 9 spheres, which somehow give the primary orientation of the whole configuration. And you can see the Enneagram here. The main triangle is 369. It's in the middle, if you notice.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is a triangle which is 1, 4, 7. And then 2, 5, 8 is another triangle in the Enneagram. So here we are seeing it in terms of columns. But we can also see it in terms of triads. This is a more advanced understanding of the symbiotic tree. You can think that the main triad doesn't begin with Keter. It begins with your purpose. If you don't have a purpose, it's impossible that you develop your crown. Because as Seneca said, there is no favorable wind for the sailor who doesn't know in which direction his boat is going. So you need a sense of purpose. You need a sense of direction, of aim, and this is the most important. If you don't have an aim, you cannot develop neither your will, nor your conscience, nor your consciousness. So the primary triad starts with your aim that comes from the center, the Holy One, which is also the 1 point in the Enneagram. So that's how we sense the beginning, no? And from there, we develop the wisdom and understanding. So in a sense, we are also studying the symbiotic tree.
Yeah, absolutely. When you explain it like that, I've seen it. Yeah, I see it very clearly. Both of them, together. Now you could see the duality and the Enneagram and by the triangles and how the columns, yeah.
It's very important that we start to feel these forces in ourselves. So how do we feel when we are immersed in opposition, in reaction, in negativity? So we fall under the trap of one force. This is why I use the color red, because it's a state of redness, passion.
Alert. Yeah.
Yes,
alert.
Exactly. It's danger.
Yep.
So we have to bring the consciousness, awareness, which I think the color yellow is good for it. This is why
absolutely
I use it. Now, there is something else which is not consciousness. It's not conscience either. It can be expressed with the word will, but I think if we say loving will is better, because it's not just a force to impose something. There is a feeling of easiness, of mercy. It's full of, well, that which can be expressed with many words.
right.
Amor, love, those are just human denominations, but there is something referring with those
the effortless effort.
Exactly. Effortless effort and being filled with the willingness to give yourself, to share yourself completely. And this force is what elevates you, is what brings you out of that tension. But for that, we need to be aware of how we move, how we feel inside. And as we grow within, we develop the 12 fruits of our symbiotic tree, our tree of life. We can also think that we are working on the 12 servants of astrology, which are represented in the New Testament, the 12 apostles.
Yeah.
Each one of them represents an astrological sign. which are called mashalim, servants in Hebrew, because they are meant to serve, not to be dominant. The problem is that our mashal, our servant, does not want to serve the light. It wants to grow in terms of I, me, and myself. I am the most important, and it's not its function. Its function is to serve. This is why it is within. If you notice, the 12 are within the triad, within the circle, and within the law of 7.
Yes.
Because they are fruits. They are not meant to be ruling. But we can, in a sense, transform our mashal. You were born in January, so you are Capricorn, I guess.
Yes.
So Capricorn has the tendency to become a workaholic or erratic, capricious, like the goats that jump from one rock to the other. But you can also use your versatility and creativity to make use of everything you have at hand. And you can build everything. Actually, your main path is the master builder, 22-4, the emperor that can build a whole project, not just for yourself, but for others. So your Capricorn stops being the capricious servant and becomes the conscious worker. Actually, if you notice,
Please.
in your main path, which is the 22-4, the number 4 implies work, conscious work. Even in base 9 analysis, the 4 is the conscious worker. We can understand all the numerological approaches with the Enneagram as well. For instance, the 9 is the humanitarian. Why? Because he brings the light. And in personality types, is the peacemaker or the harmonizer. The one in base 9 is the pioneer, the one that opens the way or leads. The 2 is the helper, or the conscious assistant, as I call it. The 3 is the enthusiast. Why? Because you need enthusiasm and compromism, as we will see, to keep going in the octave. The 4 is the conscious worker, because you bring the pillars, the basis to work, to be stable, build materiality, because we are growing in materiality. We become more and more subtle with our garments, but those are layers of matter as well. Then in the 5th, in base 9, we have the free spirit, but it's also the one that tends to become erratic in his behavior because he wants freedom, but not compromise. So he tends to become very undisciplined and capricious or stingy. Then in base 9, the 0.6 would be the nurturer. Why? Because you need to bring a nutritious force, a care, in order to continue in the octave. The 7th would be the spiritualist, or the one that finds completeness within without looking for completeness outside. The 8th is the challenger, or the justice maker. Why? Because you need to be very attuned to the truth. So base 9 is the most fundamental understanding you can have of the principles. And if you notice, it's the energy of the points in the Enneagram. Base 9 was used by the Pythagoreans. And I don't know if you have heard of the Tetraktys. It's an ancient symbol. used by the Pythagoreans.
I don't believe so. What's it called again?
Tetraktys is this you see in the middle. I just found it by chance, just following the structure of the Tetraktys. I realized that it corresponds with the middle. The Tetraktys is a triangle with 10 spheres. So you have 4 on the base, 3 in the middle, and 2, and the apex with 1. And the Pythagoreans used this symbol to explain everything. They said everything follows this structure. Actually, the tetragrammaton can also be understood as a tetraktys. Yud He Vav He, then Yud He Vav, Yud He, and Yud. It's a Kabbalistic configuration. So I think Pythagoras was somehow using that understanding that he learned from Egypt, from the Jewish Kabbalists, but he was studying with them in Babylon because they were captive there, and also with the Essenes in Mount Carmel.
Mm-hmm.
So Pythagoras was synthesizing all those principles of sacred math. And it's amazing when you follow these lines, you bring the main forces of the Enneagram into the Tetraktys. So when people say the Enneagram is a modern symbol, you can find it even in the Tetraktys. You just move this point, if you notice, you just move them outwards, and you have them perfectly attuned.
Yep.
So the Enneagram, I think, it's probably the most ancient symbol, together with the symbiotic tree. Even the flower of life, a flower in which we can find the Enneagram and the symbiotic tree, is imprinted into the Osirian, which is a temple in Egypt, one of the most ancient. And nobody knows how they carve the flower of life in that temple, because it seems carved with laser.
Yeah.
So something is missing there. There were advanced civilizations that knew about many of these principles, but this wisdom was lost over the years. And this is why humanity had to start all over again, over and over, because of cataclysmic conditions, forgetfulness. Wow. But I don't think the problem is wisdom itself, because some people, especially coming from the religious side, say that all this is satanic. And they say, well, all those civilizations were destroyed and they knew about this wisdom, so it's useless. But the Messiah also came 2,000 years ago, and all the Christian societies have been experiencing wars, pestilence, disease. So it's not the wisdom, it's the lack of understanding of the wisdom. There have been many civilizations which are amazing wisdom, in Greece, in India, but did they understand? No. So
man, so beautifully simple, you know, if you choose to understand.
Exactly. The problem is understanding, or the point of view. Religion can be understood in many ways. Religare, to connect yourself again. But what are you connecting with? To the world or to your true being?
Right.
If you use principles of conventional religion, you are following just the ways of the world. If you know yourself deeper and deeper, then you have the key of wisdom and understanding.
Yep.
This is why the master expressed himself in parables, so people neither see nor understand, as he said, because he is targeting those who can see and understand, and those who deserve to receive that knowledge. Because one thing I have noticed is that if you start speaking about all this to anyone randomly, most of people are going to be indifferent. Many others will be attacking and saying you are an agent of Satan, misleading. And then just a few portion will understand. The tragedy is that those few who understand forget it very quickly. So it's almost an impossible mission to change someone with this. Is the compromise of the own person.
Yeah, because I mean it's their own choice if they choose to be stuck in the stagnation or choose freedom and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's their ultimate choice. I mean, you can't to force it on them, so to say.
The ancient Pythagoreans believed that if they implanted their way of education into society, that everything would be functioning well. But the problem is that they try to make Pythagorean education available by means of politics. And that's how they came to be into big trouble, because as you know, they were assassinated and there was a huge rebellion against them.
Yes.
And the problem is that when you mix wisdom with the political misunderstanding of how society works, then you have many problems.
I think too with when you introduce a way when you introduce a whole as a hierarchy system, it just, because in politics it just seems like it's a hierarchy system, and that it could be understood in that, but there's just so many points of stagnation in a hierarchy system that it just don't resonate. Once somebody gets they abuse the power that they have, once they get it, they just don't want to share it, or I don't know, or I ain't sure, but a lot of thoughts going through my head right now.
Yeah, that's the awakening of your intuition.
Yeah.
So you can bring that wisdom from within. I'm going to show you the traditional Tetraktys. Well, this is a representation I found in Wikipedia, which is not a good source of information, by the way, but sometimes they get interesting representations. And if you notice, in the traditional Tetraktys, there are 10 points. And how many triangles do you see? This was an exercise they use in the Pythagorean school.
Right. So there's the main triangle, and then you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 triangles within the main triangle. 11, I would say, I guess.
Only those. There can be many more. There will be 10 with the main triangle, but you can guess there can be many more triangles. No, you can say, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 with the big one, and then 11 with this one.
Wow. Yep.
12.
Yes.
13.
Yep.
You can continue, so you can get
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely. Yeah, because you could start at whatever point and come from the bottom up and from side to side. And I see what you mean now. So really just infinite.
Yeah, you can see it from different points of view, but it's an exercise to expand the awareness of perceptual intelligence. And many psychological exercises develop this awareness. We need this awareness to understand ancient symbols.
Yes.
And the Tetraktys, to me, is a clear manifestation of the Enneagram, because there are 9 points around one. From the Pythagorean school, which was very geometrical and mathematical in the way they taught.
Right.
Now I would like to get a bit into the working or inner work Enneagram, as I call it, which is the principles that are operating when we start the process of inner transformation.